A new opinion piece at CarolinaJournal.com carries this headline: North Carolina veteran is symbolic of good people facing political intimidation. Its author is the opinion editor at Carolina Journal, Ray Nothstine. And Ray, you start this by saying that Sherry Lynn Womack finds herself in the proverbial hot water. Why?
Well, that's the big question now. I think really when you get down to it is, are we going to cancel Trump supporters? Are we going to go to the effort where we're actually going out and kind of rooting out Trump supporters in our society? And I think that's ultimately the question here. I mean, we had 75 million Americans vote for this president. There's just a lot of blowback now. And what ended up getting her in hot water was she went up to the Washington, D.C., to protest the election of Biden, but also to support, she says this, to support the president and kind of show her support for his last 4 years in office. And, in her own words, she said that she had doubts about the election, but that wasn't really the reason for her going up there. Really, the reason was for her to show support. And she's a member of the Lee County School Board, and of course they're coming out and trying to cancel her or strip her of her position, force her to resign, terminate her. They're opening up an investigation, but she wasn't anywhere near the folks that swarmed the Capitol, which had been announced by our president at Locke Foundation, Amy Cook, in a very good video you can check out on Carolina Journal. And so I think it's just that question is are we going to not just have the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, but also in society and culture have a spirit of the First Amendment, not just the legal aspect, but the spirit of it.
And a little bit of background, Sherry Lynn Womack was up there on January 6th, which is the day that the Capitol was stormed. She was part of the rally that involved President Trump, but didn't take any part in the storming of the Capitol itself, had actually left the scene by the time that this happened. One of the interesting things that you wrote about this is that one of the most amusing things in politics today calls for unity coupled with bloodlust for otherwise peaceful political opponents. These are the tactics of those who are tired of debate and merely want to silence their critics. This is a real concern, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's an absolute real concern. Amy's talked about this again in that video that you can find at Carolina Journal. And one of the things that's so concerning, whether it be just people being deplatformed or canceled, I think when you think about it, there's a lot of folks who are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to share their opinion. And that's really one of the most important things in our society, is that we have this ability to go into the public square, to share our conscience. James Madison talks about conscience being the most important property. You just read through the Federalist in our Constitution, and property is essential. But conscience, he says, is the most important aspect of our property. And of course, Fisher Ames, who was a big part of the founding from Massachusetts, he talks about we have this inherent right to property. We have an inherent right to firearms. We have an inherent right to change our government. And so these things were well understood at America's founding and through our republic. And we just want that spirit to continue to prosper and to flourish in society. When it's threatened, I think that we need to have a gut check as people. And just two, I think it's really important that we don't take, I mentioned this in the piece, we don't take politics too seriously, that we want to cancel people or that we want to shout down their opinion or strip them of their opinion, because really what that says is that kind of starts moving into the realm of totalitarianism when you think that politics is just so important that other people can't disagree with me.
In fact, one of the lines later in your piece is the prolonged absence of any free exchange of information within a country opens up a gulf of incomprehension between whole groups of the population. I don't know that we are seeing that in full force now, but it seems to me like we're kind of getting to that place where whole entire swaths of the population just don't understand each other at all.
Right. That quote's from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago. And so that's one of my favorite writers. And he makes a great point. If you suppress speech, then you're going to have a more volatile society. And we don't want that here in America. We don't want that in North Carolina. So when you see tactics that are aimed to suppress speech, then you're going to have more dangerous dissent in a way that I think does threaten our republic. It threatens our very government. And just sort of this idea of holistic and mature and healthy society that we need. So So yeah, if you squash dissent, then you're going to have unhealthy dissent.
And in looking specifically at Sherry Lynn Womack, here's a person who is a Lee County school board member, was the top vote getter in the last election, 33-year veteran of the U.S. military. And you conclude your piece by saying that if we're going to have this type of thing, if we can't agree on this ability to disagree, we're going to drive good people out of the public square while forfeiting our great inheritance of liberty.
Yeah, well, I thought she was a good representative. I don't know Sherry Lynn Womack personally. I know that she's involved in Republican Party politics in North Carolina. She's, like you said, she's on the Lee County School Board. But I think she's a good representative of good people. I mean, I dug into her background a little bit. She served in Iraq and Afghanistan. She's a recipient of 2 Bronze Stars, Legion of Merit. She's received all these accommodations when she was in the Army, 33-year veteran. What's also interesting is that she started out as a private. I guess came from humble background, joined the Army, enlisted at 17, became a warrant officer, got her education, became an officer, retired as a lieutenant colonel. So all these things I think are just fascinating about her background, and she deserves to be somebody we listen to. We may not agree with her, and that's fine. We may not agree with anything she says about the president or about what's going on in Washington, or even what she does with the Lee County School Board. But she has a right to those opinions, and they should be respected. And given her background, I think she's an important voice and probably an asset to the Lee County School Board.
Once again, the title of the column is North Carolina Veteran is Symbolic of Good People Facing Political Intimidation. The author of that column, Ray Nothstine, opinion editor at Carolina Journal. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.